All right, we're going to move into the results of the MIMO McKinsey study. So this is a collaboration that we started actually back in probably 2020, I think we started it actually with VJ over there. And the objective of this study was to create a longitudinal study, so year over year, or in this case biannual, that looked at the efficacy and the challenges of implementing AI into manufacturing and operations. And what we wanted to do is give people really guidance. So a map of where they are, show you where you are on the map, and then give you turn-by-turn directions. And so we'll talk through that. And this is a collaboration between McKinsey and our students. Let me get the clicker here. Okay, so first I think we have one. I'm going to talk about this, and then we'll go back to you guys. So these are the students that do the research on our side. So last year, Kaylee and Ryan did a lot of the quantitative work. So every year we do quantitative, qualitative. And then the team of Max, Will, Carla, and Rachel have done a lot of the qualitative work, interviewing different member companies about how they do things, digging deeper into the problems. And then Dave Lausen has been our MIMO mentor, who has been working with the team as they pull things together, as has VJ as well. So now we'll go back to you guys.
Perfect. Well, hey everyone, my name's Pete Kimball. I'm an associate partner with McKinsey & Company. I lead our partnership with MIMO and have been doing so since about 2020, 2021. Also have Kyle Danner here today with me, an engagement manager who leads a lot of our industrial transformation work. Really excited to share with you some of the latest findings from the research. And again, thanks a ton to all the students and other collaborators and companies that have participated along the way here. All right, so we'll do a quick recap of the research. We'll talk a little bit about some of the investment trends in digitization and AI, ML, and operations, and then close it out with some of the implications for those on their analytics journey here. In 2021, we really wanted to put some numbers behind the media coverage of AI, ML, and operations. What are the KPI improvements? What were the leaders doing in this space? What was the investment required, both people, process, technology? And we looked at, over the last few years, we've looked at over 175 companies, 21 KPIs, lots of use cases and business outcomes. And we've been able to really start to see some unexpected and also kind of cool trends over the last 3 or 4 years here. So this is a view of the participants from 2021. Those who participated take a survey. We also follow up with some interviews, and we try to boil it down into a couple different buckets of performance. First, on the left-hand side is enablers. Think of this like investment in capabilities, processes, and tools. Your higher up means you're doing absolutely everything that we could think of in AI, ML deployment. Your lower down means you're not investing in some of those. On the results axis, the x-axis, the higher KPI performance versus others indexes you farther to the right-hand side. So let's say you're only getting 3% efficiency improvement in a use case. The leaders are getting 10%. If you're at the lower end, you're farther to the left-hand side. Then the scale of deployment, this is how many domains, applications, that's the size of the bubble here. So in 21, we still had a lot of companies in the top left. That meant they were planning and investing, but they weren't necessarily seeing the KPIs pay off yet. There are a number of reasons for that. We'll cover that in a second here. But what was really cool is if we took a look at the 2023 population, everything moved to the right and down. That meant we had fewer people stuck in a planning phase without the impact paying off. We have more companies getting impact, and we have a lot more on the bottom right who are getting impact with lower investment overall. And then we see the trajectory is kind of more bottom left to top right. So folks are spending less time planning their AI and digital implementations and spending more time actually getting the results.
Computers, this beautiful royal blue color. And because that means they get great results, but they don't spend as much money And we've actually seen those people move farther to the right than we've ever seen them. So I think that's a really profound change that we saw year over year.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll go into a bit more detail about what we saw and some of the data behind it, but I just want to highlight 5 or 6 themes here across the data. So those that are on the farther right-hand side, the leaders group, they expanded their distance in terms of performance versus the rest between 2021 and today. On average, they'll get about 4x the payout, whereas 4x the impact versus the rest. 2021, there was like 2 to 3x, so they increased their distance. On the people side, this topic was more in middle management. Now it's across leaders. We're seeing it at the C level. A lot of people like to say, like, hey, this topic's on the CEO agenda. We got the data to back it up now. And then a couple of topics around deployment scale and partnering. We saw expertise as one of the biggest hangups for folks to have success in 21. And now we're seeing a lot more domain-specific solutions available to companies that are enabling them to have leader-like impact without maybe necessarily building the full technical depth that companies that were successful in 2021. For example, in 21, we talked with one company that was doing a real-time controls solution, and they had to have their controls engineers, specific domain expertise, the data engineers, data scientists, visualizations, UI, UX. They had to design everything themselves. Now you can purchase those solutions off the shelf for their specific application. And so it's evolved dramatically. We think that's unlocking some of the impact. Similarly, in the partnering space, as those solutions have been proven out, we see more traditional business partners to the operators building capabilities to be able to work with them. Whereas in 21, we saw a lot more usage of startups and academia, as this was earlier in its evolution. And one of the things I actually saw in the Flex presentation here around data execution and governance, it continues to be a major differentiator among those that are leading, that they are governing how they collect data, how they organize it, how they store it, and then also model performance and action. Things like tracking model fairness doesn't even show up on the radars of a lot of folks that are starting out, but those leaders are actually tracking a lot more and governing their overall use case performance. So we got a few slides here to go through the actual details, and Kyle will take a second here to walk you through some of that.
Thank you. Yeah, so as Pete noted, right, we're really seeing in the research now about 4 times the impact for leaders versus the rest of the companies, compared to 3 times the impact in 2021. As a reminder, this impact is measured across these 6 categories and 21 KPIs in total in these categories. In 21 and 23, we really saw efficiency and cost KPIs. There were gaps there between leaders and the rest of the companies. Now in 2023, we're seeing growth in responsiveness and environmental KPIs as well. So that impact is broadening overall. About 2/3 of leaders are reporting that they have digital innovation centers of excellence. And about half of those leaders are reporting now that they are able to scale that impact across different use cases within their companies, which is really leading to this outsized impact versus the rest of the companies. So we'll talk about 4 areas where leaders are differentiating themselves to help get to this impact. So the first is in payback period. And so we're seeing from 2021 to 2023, the payback period for both leaders and the bottom 50% of companies in the research is both shortening and converging. In 2021, it was anywhere from 12 to 24 months. Now it's about 6 to 12 months. Leaders are still achieving higher impact than the bottom 50% of companies, but they're both shortening and converging in payback time. 2 key takeaways here. The first is that huge investments are not required to drive this impact. What we're hearing in interviews is it's more important to have the right use case to be able to capture this impact. And the second thing here is that leaders can and are choosing bigger and more expensive challenges to go after in terms of what they're pursuing, driven by that greater confidence in KPI payoff. Some of the interviews really highlighted companies developing predictive maintenance solutions in-house, and then taking that and investing heavily and actually spinning off subsidiary companies to offer those solutions to the industry. So really great examples of being able to drive impact both in-house and across the industry due to that higher confidence in a KPI payoff. The second area that we'll talk about here is leadership. And it's becoming clear that it's more important at the top now than ever. And so in 2021, we saw leaders being concentrated here in the C-2, C-1 areas. Now we're seeing that shift up to the CEO and board in C-1, which is really showing that the strategic priority of analytics is rising on the agenda for leading companies. We're hearing again in interviews that the idea of an executive champion is really, really important. One of the reasons for that is it can be hard to calculate ROIs and paybacks for some of these investments. And so working through that uncertainty is really easy when you have an executive champion to drive it. One really clear story that we heard from leaders was an example where a company was developing an automated process control solution. They were actually partnering with external players, had some difficulties and setbacks, had to pull that development in-house and invest heavily in R&D in order to drive the solution. That would not have been likely without an executive champion to drive that process through. In the end, they were ultimately successful in developing the solution. And then again, like the previous example, they were able to spin that off into a subsidiary and offer that solution to the broader industry. So a really great example of being able to drive forward in the face of uncertainty because of the executive champion pushing the digitization efforts for the company. The third area is really in this external partnership. So in 2021, we're seeing, or 2023, we're seeing a little bit of a different landscape for leading companies versus 2021, with a shift to utilizing academia and startup less than in 2021 for leading companies. As noted earlier and in the first keynote presentation, there are plenty of solutions in the industry now, which are taking place for some of the offerings that academia and startup were providing. We're also seeing leaders maintain the same level of industry partnership as in 2021. Pete noted it earlier, but having these partnerships really enables expertise to be at the fingertips of these companies. Think about low code, no code solutions or Gen AI powered assistance, just being able to connect your data to it and utilize that, right? You don't need that expertise as much anymore. We're hearing from leading companies in our interviews that they're partnering in terms of strategy development for AI ML. They're sending out for data model development, and they're also using external players' solutions for predictive analytics to just provide their data and get insights into when they need to act in their operations, which is really cool. One other great example that we heard of in our interviews was cross-industry collaboration. So at conferences like MIMO here, where you get to see a lot of different companies, we actually heard a really great anecdote where a mining company was talking about meeting with oil and gas and pharma companies to talk about analogous processes and the insights that they had and that they could take and learn from to go and put into their operations, which is a really cool way to make impact and to really understand what's possible. Critically, you'll see the bottom 50% of companies, they're not really leveraging players. It's not shown on this chart, but they use vendors just over half the time for bottom 50% of companies. The rest of the players are 40% or less, so not nearly as much partnership there.
Hey, Kyle, I just want to make one point, being the academic guy here, because it kind of kills me to see that arrow move so harshly. But what you need to understand is that was 90%. You had to partner with academia and startups. Those were your only choices in 2021. And now it's still, 55-ish% of the time. So still half of the solutions are coming from startups and academia. It's just that was your only choice in 2021.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. And finally, the fourth area where leaders are differentiating is really in collection of data, right? And so we're seeing almost double the rate of leaders collecting data on more than 50% of their equipment compared to the bottom 50% of companies, which are really not collecting a lot of data, right? On less than 10% of their equipment here. You heard it in Paul's presentation earlier, right? Analyze the problem, collect the data. Leaders are talking also consistently in interviews about that and making sure that it's well-organized, structured, available, and at the right level of granularity so that you can have effective decision-making. which is crucial. We're also seeing a lot of industry players being able to provide end-to-end solutions to make it more feasible to collect, analyze, and store that data, which is really, really great in helping drive this effective decision-making. So those are the 4 areas where we're seeing leaders really differentiate themselves across the different measures in this research and drive further impact. So we'll pass to Bruce now to talk about the journey and remaining steps.
All right. Thank you very much. So just to kind of quickly recap, leaders are outperforming their paybacks, but risk is going down, investment is going down. So it's really hasn't ever been a better time. We're seeing people with leaders, or leadership is helping to push through these ROI problems. Paul talked about, calculating ROI. I'm sure not all of those were easy to calculate. And so it takes leadership and vision to push through that and get that ROI on the tail end. This is a huge, huge change. We talked about different vendor solutions, these micro vertical solutions. We see cement companies actually creating specialized software for cement predictive maintenance, and you can buy that from that company, or a real-time process control solution from a company that needed it and then started to sell it. So there's these micro vertical solutions that are increasing, but the biggest barrier still is the amount of data. And we see, as Kyle said, that's what seems one of the big things that's separating leaders is their ability to collect data, because the more data you collect, the better you are at it, the better the quality, the better fidelity, the more useful it is. And Paul alluded to that. The other thing is you can chain it together. In very much the same way, if you put a robot in the middle of a factory, it's not as useful as a series of robots all working together. So this is now the advertisement part. What we do is we create a playbook. I talked about that, a map, your position on the map, and then turn-by-turn directions. That's what this is. So for those who fill out the study, we auto-generate this playbook for you that shows you where you fit on this and gives you an idea with, are you an executor, a planner, a leader, or are you just emerging? And then how you get to the next best level. We're not trying to tell you how to be the best. We're trying to tell you how to get to the next step. So it very much is helping to guide you. Where should you go from here? So if you scan that QR code, I'll give you a few minutes to do that, or a minute. And if not, go to our website and fill out the contact form, put your email address in. We will be doing another run of these playbooks with people who say that they would like to participate. So thank you very much.